Hello and welcome to Ellevate Designs Learn to Knit tutorial on casting on. Casting on is the first step in any knitting process. There are several ways to cast on, and today we'll be learning the backwards loop cast on. This is a simple cast on technique that's great for beginners. For this tutorial, you'll need some yarn and one pair of knitting needles. These can be straight or circular. To begin this cast on, we'll start with a slip knot. To make a slip knot, start with your loose end of your yarn held in both hands. Move one finger under the yarn and up, like this, so the yarn passes over the finger. Use a finger from the other hand to move the front strand of yarn forward, creating an open loop. Move your first finger behind the back strand. This creates a cross in the yarn and in front of the front strand. Catch the front strand with the top of your first finger and pull this strand through the loop like this. Let go with your second finger and gently tug this two strands of yarn to snug the loop up against your finger. Place this loop on your knitting needle. This will be your first stitch. Creating a slip knot can take a little practice, so don't worry if this part takes you a few tries to get it. So you'll see there are two strands of yarn coming away from your loop on the needle. The one that connects to your ball of yarn we'll call the working yarn, and the one that goes to the cut end we'll call the tail. Hold your needle with the stitch and the tail in one hand. If you're a left-handed knitter, this might be your left hand. I'll demonstrate it on the right. With your other hand holding the working yarn, take one finger underneath the yarn and up like this. Take your needle in underneath the front strand of the yarn and up so the yarn passes over top of the needle. Gently release your finger from the yarn, keeping a little tension in the working yarn. You'll see that this has formed a loop in the working yarn around the needle. This is your second stitch. To create more stitches, we repeat the process. Take one finger underneath the working yarn and up. Take the needle underneath the front strand of the yarn and up so the yarn passes over the needle, and gently let the working yarn fall off of your finger, creating another loop on the needle. I'll show you a few more times. You continue like this until you have the number of stitches that you want for your cast on row. So here I've cast on 10 stitches. One thing to practice with the backwards loop cast on, or any cast on for that matter, is getting a reasonable tension in your cast on stitches. The tension is how tightly the stitches cling to the needle. Each time you create a stitch, you gently tug the working yarn to nestle this stitch up against the others. If you pull quite tightly when you're doing this, you'll get a set of stitches that's very snug on the needle, like this one, which will make it difficult to knit these stitches as you move forward with your knitting. You can see in this example of tight tension stitches that when I try to spread them apart, they stay fairly close to one another. Conversely, if you're quite loose with your working yarn when you cast on stitches, you can end up with a very loose set of stitches like this one. You can see here that when I spread these stitches, they move quite far from one another on the needle. Now, you'll be able to knit these stitches without trouble, but as you move forward, you'll find that the edge of your knitting looks quite loose and maybe a little bit wobbly. A good rule of thumb when judging your tension for cast-on stitches is that you should be able to easily spread the stitches a little more than half a centimeter or about a little more than 1/4 of an inch. Beginner knitters most often find that their stitches are too tight rather than too loose when they're learning to cast on. So if you're just starting out, try to think about letting your stitches be a little on the loose side, and you'll probably end up with a good tension. So there you have it, the backwards loop cast on. It's a great beginner cast-on method. Give it a try. Let me know if you have any questions as you work on this, and subscribe if you'd like to see more of Ellevate's Learn to Knit tutorials.